Welcome to Spotlight. I'm Rich Bontrager, your host, and Spotlight shines on the amazing leaders, speakers, authors, and influencers that know who they are and what they do, and how what they do impacts so many people. They are the go-to experts, and they are brand worthy experts with their brands that shine, and they help their clients all around the world. Today, our special guest is going to be Stuart Bell of 90 Minute Books. Over the last 10 years, Stuart Bell has helped hundreds of business owners and entrepreneurs create conversations starter books. Co-founding of 90 Minute Books and the author of Your Book Blueprint, it's a scorecard book, by the way. His passion is about helping people just like you create something that builds your business and lasts forever. Welcome to Spotlight today, our guest, Stuart Bell. Stuart, welcome to the
Hey,
show.
Rich. Hey, Rich. Great to be here. Thanks for taking the time to do this today. I'm excited.
So we're going to talk about not just 90 Minute Books here today, not just the book that you just came out with, but we're also going to talk about you, your genius, about how you got into this business. So let's start there. What made you break away from the traditional book of let's write a book, tell our story, and hope to be the bestseller of the world? Why did you break away from that?
I think it's the this whole minimum viable movement, starting with kind of like the Tim Ferriss and the lean startup ideas. This kind of minimum viable. I was going to say minimum viable commitment, but that's the angle that I put on it a lot. But the minimum effective dose or minimum viable step, it's this idea that there's a lot of traction to be got out there as a business owner, writing something that amplifies your authority, that makes you stand out as a leader in the industry. But taking that idea of having the book out there, separating out from what people traditionally think of as the need for a book, but really focusing on what's the benefit for you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, trying to spread your message. It's really the fact that the book exists and it gets you in conversation. So that's why we're very strong in positioning these as conversation starting books rather than traditional books.
Well, and like I know you've talked about the fact this book, they're not big, thick, heavy books. They're 100, 125 pages maybe. They're smaller and slimmer. They're great for hopping on a plane, and within 3 hours, you've kind of digested a book. But more than digesting a book, you've learned about someone else's genius, right?
So this idea of a book that you can read within a couple of hours, I often fly from up home here in Pennsylvania down to the office in Florida, 2-hour, 45-minute flight, to be able to board the plane, sit down, grab a drink, flick through, land at the other end, being educated and having some kind of motivation that the next step that's suggested in the book is the one to take. That's the real secret for most people.
Well, and I think that's really big. I know part of your genius in planning and creating this is you've intentionally worked hard to make sure there is a call to action. You intentionally coach the people, shall I say, to not put everything in it and make them hungry to come back for more, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And there's nuances in every stage of everything that we do. So that nuance around not putting everything in it, the way to think about that is you need to deliver as much valuable as possible, but within the scope of the subject that you're talking about. So we as business owners, if you've been in business for more than a year, you know 10 books worth of stuff. It's all of the 101 level questions that people ask. But the problem with that is that the scope just runs and runs and runs. So a much better way of thinking about it is to answer comprehensively the question that you're promising in the title, and then say to people, obviously there's much more to know about this subject, or obviously there's much more that we can tell you about it. So the next step is this small basic next step. It's either consume more information on the website if you're in an information gathering stage. It's potentially request a white paper or complete an assessment if you're in a stage of I'm really trying to work out whether this is right for me. Or it's reach out and schedule a complimentary call, a complimentary assessment as the next step once they're ready to get going.
Well, and part of your genius that you've come up with your particular brand here is you also making the book easily. Now, you did just come out with your own book about the blueprint for this. That's another conversation. But part of that conversation is you literally interview, like we're doing right now, you interview the potential authors to pull the best content out of them, and you help them put it together. So you don't do it all for them, but you help them get a great running start, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. And that really was one of the key secrets to the business as a whole. So we were really the first to take this approach in the way that we do it. And in the last 10 years, obviously there were other competitors around now. But this idea of you being the author of an idea, not the writer of a book, is key to helping most people achieve this. Because what we're looking at doing is democratizing writing, democratizing book creation as much as possible. And one of the barriers to that is writing. It's difficult for us as business owners to write because we probably, well, let me speak for myself. That wasn't a strength in school. Avoiding doing homework with a strength in school, but not writing. But authoring ideas, I'm never short of ideas. So our approach of working very hard with you to create this outline that then allows us to interview you and ask the questions that elicit your best thinking on a subject, and then that's transcribed and edited into a narrative format that comes into the book, that gets you 85% of the way there, if not 100% of the way there.
But these really are made for go-to experts, or those that want to be elevated to go-to expert status, that these books really become a bridge to their professional career, maybe their speaking career, maybe they're podcasters, musicians. But this book really now sells them, really sells them as a go-to expert. People will read more about it and say, you know what, I want them. I need to contact them. It really is that next bridge of amplification. How did you come up with that idea of saying the book really is the amplifier?
And it goes back to what the job of work is. So there's a great book, a traditional book by a guy called Robert Cialdini called Persuasion. And it's this idea that throughout our lives, there's a million things that are lined up to persuade us, to precondition us to go in a certain path, have a certain outcome. And marketers, the most evil scheming of marketers, kind of take that persuasion elements and line things up so that the outcome is more effective. So when we think about what the job of work of a book is, number one, it's not book sales. There's no one out there who would be able to make more money from book sales than they would a client for the clients that we're talking to. So we're talking to professional services clients who have a reasonable lifetime value of clients, and there's no way that you're going to sell enough books to cover just one client. So when we think about what the job of work is, the job of work is to start that conversation with the people who are most likely to become your clients further down the track. And whether that further down the track is a day, a week, a year, 5 years, it's identifying and starting that conversation now. And the book is the best way of doing it because it's a very non-threatening way of introducing people to who you are. So let's say we talk about this idea of 5 Mile Famous quite a lot. So let's say that you were a financial advisor who worked in somewhere like the Woodlands in Texas or the Villages in Orlando, these big 55 plus communities. So house prices are expensive there. There's an affluent community. They've got a lot of investable assets. You're a financial planner. It's the perfect mix of clients. Now, you could run ads, Facebook ads, for example, to that group of people saying, I'm the best financial planner. Come and speak to me. I've helped 100 of your neighbors retire early. Okay, that's not terrible. You're going to get some of those people who are most interested to move now. But if you wrote a book that was the Village's Guide to Early Retirement or the Village's Guide to Asset Protection or something specific to that area, the number of people who are going to raise their hand is in theory greater because you're also going to attract all of the people who are interested but not ready today. Now you can start a conversation with them. So when they are ready, whether that's today or next year, they already know, they already feel like they know, like, and trust you. There's some rapport that you're building because you've started by giving value in a non-threatening way in the book. So that was really the mindset switch. It's using these assets as the most effective way to start the conversation and really lead with giving value.
So Stuart, with all that said, coming down to the end here, I want to clarify something we mentioned earlier, but I think this is part of the genius of 90-minute books. But I think what you really have your own value wrapped around, and that is the book is not the product. The conversation is really the product. You use the books by these amazing writers and creators and entrepreneurs to get to the product of the conversation. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And that really kind of reinforces everything that we've talked about. The conversation, being able to start the conversation is the job of work of what we're trying to do as business owners and entrepreneurs. The book isn't the product, it's that conversation, ultimate conversation, that's the product. So our whole approach, and your approach as you're thinking about it, should be, how can I get to that point? The challenge with traditional publishing is that all of the vested interests is the book being the product, because everyone makes their money from selling books and anything else just happens to be secondary. As a marketing tool, as an asset to drive business, it's the conversation that's the product. We just happen to use a book as the most effective way of getting into conversation with people. So absolutely, the book is, the conversation is the product, not the book is the product.
Stuart Bell, co-founder of 90 Minute Books. Thanks for being with us today on Spotlight. Great to have you with us.
Rich, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
And that's going to do it for this edition of Spotlight. I'm Rich Bontrager. Remember, Spotlight shines the light on amazing authors, speakers, leaders, influencers to shine in their genius, their brand authority as the go-to leaders. Watch for more Spotlight interviews coming your way from Rock the Stage Media.